Welcome to the G3 Podcast. Today we are going to talk about Israel. Israel is sort of dominating the news headlines right now. That's not necessarily uncommon, but it seems to be even more on the rise recently. It's dominating political discourse. It's in the Charlie Kirk assassination news, peace accords, all sorts of things happening. And so I want to spend a little bit of time hopefully offering some clarity on how Christians ought to view Israel, which of course is a somewhat controversial topic. Well, as I mentioned, Israel is definitely in the news right now, and I think it is rightly so causing Christians to wrestle with how we ought to view Israel today. And as with many issues, of course, there are several different positions on this, and really two extremes that you will find today, even among Christians. On the one side, you might have this sort of all in for Israel, maybe stemming from a sort of hyper-dispensational view that sort of baptizes the modern secular state of Israel and treats it as the fulfillment of biblical prophecy, insisting that Christians today must support Israel unconditionally. And I do want to note at this point that even among those who would hold to a dispensational theology, you do have some distinctions. You have your sort of popular level, left behind dispensationalism that's sort of extreme and really not rooted in even the historic articulations of the system. And that sort of popular level hyper-dispensationalism is certainly behind a lot of the one extreme position towards the nation of Israel today. There are other forms of dispensationalism. The more the men who are writing the books, who are reading the papers at ETS, who are articulating the core doctrines that they believe are biblical regarding dispensationalism, who are not quite that extreme. I want to make that point at the outset here. And then on the other side, you have a really troubling and growing sort of anti-Semitism, that people are wrongly tying political conflicts and things that they disagree with, perhaps by the nation of Israel or perhaps by things that other Jewish people are saying or doing, and they're tying it to their ethnicity, they're tying it to genetics. And that is racism, to tie particular sin problems or particular things you disagree with to genetics is inherently racist. And so that sort of anti-Semitism is a problematic concern that is on the rise today. Both of these positions, these extremes, like all in for Israel, the nation state of Israel today is the people of God, and we have to blindly and uncritically support Israel no matter what they do, that's an extreme, unbiblical, dangerous position. And then on the other side is the dangerous position of anti-Semitism, that is also a problem. And what I really want to talk about is really carve a middle way. And we hear the phrase middle way and we get a little nervous sometimes because usually that means some sort of compromise or some sort of squishy position. I don't mean it in that way. I mean that the biblical view of how Christians ought to view Israel today falls between those two extremes, is centered on the gospel of Jesus Christ, and avoids the dangerous theological views that both of those positions would embrace. And I really believe that this is true regardless of your eschatology. Of course, eschatology will play in to a certain degree. We'll talk about that here in a moment, on how you view the future of ethnic or national Israel. Eschatology, hermeneutical positions, these sorts of things do play in on that. And I want to walk through that here in a moment. But I am convinced that regardless of your eschatology, and even regardless of how you view the future of national ethnic Israel, that there are some biblical principles that ought to inform how we view the nation of Israel today that doesn't fall into either one of those problematic positions. So let's start with the theological question that really underlies all of this discussion, and that is, what is the future of Israel? What is the past of Israel? What is the nature of the Abrahamic covenant and its fulfillment? And of course, this is an intramural debate among faithful Christians. On the one hand, you do have more dispensational premillennialists who would strongly argue that God has a future plan for ethnic and even national Israel that is rooted in the promises made to Abraham in Genesis, that those promises have not yet been fulfilled, but they will be fulfilled in the future millennial kingdom of Christ, where the nation of Israel will be a distinct, observable nation state and will receive those promises. So, for example, just to quote here the late John MacArthur, who would be an example of this, and again, a more faithful, thoughtful version of this than the more left-behind popular versions. But John MacArthur said this. He said, "There is still a future and a kingdom involving the salvation and restoration and the reign of the nation Israel, historical Jews." So in this view, again, God's promises to Abraham regarding the land are seen as literal, and they await a true fulfillment during the millennial reign of Christ on earth. But there are even more moderate positions on this, and even held by people who would not claim to be dispensationalists. I mean, throughout church history, many figures from different eschatological camps affirmed a future mass conversion and restoration of the Jewish people, and even a nation state that would be blessed by God. And included among those who hold this would be men like Martin Bucer, Theodore de Beza, William Perkins, Isaac Watts, Jonathan Edwards, J.C. Ryle, D. Martin Lloyd-Jones, and Charles Spurgeon.